Okay, so next we can finally start the fun part, which is creating a terrain, create that environment to let your player to walk around. So first step is you go to Game Object, 3D Object, and then choose Terrain. And then you will create this big platform. So keep in mind, don't pick plane. So plane, it will be so much smaller comparatively, and also it won't give you the same tool that a terrain have. So terrain will have like gravity, and then the camera will like automatically attach on it, and also they have all those cool tools to raise and lower, stuff like that. So make sure you choose like 3D object terrain instead of a plane. Okay, so first I'll select the terrain, and then I'll look at the tools in the inspector panel. The first one is the first button on the left is the create neighbor terrain. What it do is pretty much when you click on the surrounding space of the first terrain you built, it will make the terrain bigger. But I think for the purpose of the demo, the one platform is big enough. Okay, if you can start your game with only one terrain, and then you can always add more bigger, newer neighbor terrain using the tool here. The other button on the side is called Paint Terrain. Okay, Paint Terrain actually have multiple different options in the same tool. So when you click on the menu, you will see the option of Raise Lower Terrain, Paint Texture, and other stuff. We'll go through a quick demo showing what's the difference. So first, the Raise and Lower Terrain. And also what is called Paint Terrain, because you can actually paint it like this by choosing a brush, and just by drawing on the terrain, you will raise and lower the shape of the terrain you have. If you just simply left click to raise, if you want to lower it, simply just hold shift and left click to lower. So if I hold shift, you can see the terrain will go flat down. So feel free to experiment with like different texture, different brushes. You can see some look rougher, some look smoother. I think there's one look pretty like mountain a lot, like this one. This tool look pretty cool. Excuse me. Usually I will suggest you to create the terrain on the side of your environment. So when the player get into your environment, they won't see the edge of your scene like right away. So that if you can see the edge of the world, it will kind of draw away like kind of the immersive feel, like the realistic feel. Okay, so I think it's good for now. The other tool here is set height. I'll show the paint texture a little bit. I'll create like the height for the tool for setting different height. Okay, so with set height, you can actually, by changing the value over here, instead of just eyeballing using the raise and lower terrain, set height, you can create a defined height for that terrain. So for example, I'll create like a pond here, so I'll just make it like 0, and then I will raise the height over here a little bit. Probably it's a little bit too much. And then you can see I'll like create like a platform. So that platform will be a unified height, so my player can later on like walk on this platform here that I created. Okay, so I think the brush, make it a little bit smaller, have more control. Okay, so yeah, this is the set height. And smooth height is if your mountain is a little bit too dramatic, you want to smoothen it out. All you need is like you can draw like paint on it, so it will smoothen the edge of the terrain. Then last is the stain terrain. If you feel like drawing with the brush take forever, oh, I think I forgot to mention if you can also change the opacity. If the opacity is higher, the change of the terrain will be much dramatic and move much faster. If you make the opacity lower, like it will the change will be a little more subtle. Okay, and last, the same terrain, you can just create a set height, and when you just simply click on it, where you can like add, so it will just kind of build anything to make it higher. So you can like build on top of the kind of the terrain you have without like drawing it. It's like kind of a faster way to build like your terrain in a different way. Okay, so feel free to like play around with your like different like setting over here. You can see using the stem tool, I'd be able to like kind of like add, and like by clicking it, you can create some more defined shapes with the brush you're picking. Okay, so instead of like drawing, if you've, I think it doesn't look that obvious because I have my opacity set up very low, because yeah, like after increase the opacity, the change, it's like much dramatic and much faster. So yeah, stem tool can help you build like terrain a little bit much faster than the raise and lower terrain, but it might be a little bit too much, so I'll just use the smooth side to make it a little bit not so crazy. Okay, so feel free to play around with the tools over here to create a scene that you want. Okay, next let me show you the paint texture tool. So now it just look white, doesn't look like an actual scene at all. Okay, because it doesn't really have any texture on it. So choosing the paint texture, and then let's click on this edit terrain layer to define a texture. Okay, but we encountered a problem because we don't really have any texture in our scene. Okay, so you can feel free to draw your own texture. You can use Photoshop, or you can take photo of actual grass and make your own texture. That's totally cool. All you need is like put the texture in your asset folder. Here I'm going to show you a quick method to download something called Standard Asset, okay, which has a lot of like basic elements that you can use in your scene, okay, such as texture for the terrain.